Top takeaways from VMworld and how they relate to disaster recovery. Hello, I'm Shannon Snowden. I'm the Senior Technical Marketing Architect for Zerto. Today we'll be discussing the software-defined data center, updates to VMware disaster recovery tools, and then the software-defined data center as it relates to software-defined disaster recovery. So let's take a quick look at the software-defined data center. I thought Steve Harrod at VMworld the day one had a really good way of describing the software-defined data center in the first general session. And he described it as the software-defined data centers where all the infrastructure is virtualized and delivered as a service, and the control of the data center is entirely automated by software. Now, we believe that that's a pretty good description technically of what VMware and the industry is headed toward as far as the software-defined data center. Simply put, they're trying to make the software-defined data center really make the data center with all the physical devices a little bit more plug and play. So if you imagine a data center looking like the hypervisor with the CPU and the memory already virtualized, there's still a couple of components that require a lot more manual configuration and ongoing administration, which that's the networking and the storage layers. It seems in retrospect that maybe the last 2 or 3 VMworlds have been so focused on clouds that there was a missing link between the current data center status and the ability to do private or hybrid or public clouds. And the software-defined data center takes a step back really and redefines what is necessary for enablement of cloud, hybrid, and public deployments. So if we apply that idea to the disaster recovery component, if we're looking at disaster recovery with the physical dependencies, we've got the CPU and memory and the hypervisor already nice and elegantly, but the network and storage, they still remain as challenges, but with this configuration in DR, we're actually adding complexity by the storage replication requirement. So you're not only managing the administration of networking and storage, you're adding in storage replication, and you're gluing that all together to protect the most important applications that you have in your business. There's a lot of moving parts here that are prone to mismatches with firmware updates and drivers and things. So there's a lot of manual effort and physical asset effort for maintenance and ongoing support that really gets away from the idea of the beauty of virtualization to begin with. We were able to abstract from the hardware, and now our most critical applications are dependent, once again, upon hardware configurations. To build a little further on that idea, here's a typical array-based replication process, just from a quick level of effort comparison. So we have the virtualization team that has to essentially locate all the VMs. Then we have to move all those VMs to some sort of shared storage that's being replicated. That's coordinated with the storage team. And then there's also the replication, ongoing management to make sure that site A is being replicated to site B successfully. And then also our remote storage, we have to have that configured. And that's problematic too if we want to go to some sort of external provider. That's really one of the reasons why you haven't seen DR to the cloud really take off yet, because it's so dependent upon array-based storage. It just wasn't making a lot of sense for a lot of cloud providers, first of all, to have the same type of storage available to potential clients, because it was mostly sitting around not being used, and that's pretty expensive as when you're selling and hope to fully utilize hardware as part of your business model. So from a logical view, really the software-defined data center is intended to take this and make it look more like this. So this is the ideal state of software-defined data center, where everything is under and being managed much like what you do with the CPU and the memory currently when you build an ESX host. Let's look at some updates to disaster recovery tools from VMworld. Probably the most prevalent one that we've been asked about is the comparison between Zerto and vSphere replication. I think VMware did a really good job of delineating what vSphere replication actually is intended to do by pulling it out as a standalone appliance and making it part of Essentials Plus and up. Really what they intended for vSphere replication to be is a lower tiered VM data replication mechanism, really for protection, not for DR. In order to get any kind of workflow or failover or automation, vSphere replication has to be plugged into the full SRM. If you want to see a comparison between Zerto and vSphere replication, go to our website, as listed here in the slide, for many more details. We actually had a lot of questions about that, so we spent some time breaking out what is different between Zerto and vSphere replication to make it very clear what the choices are. Another big update from VMworld was right before VMworld, VMware acquired Nicira, which is essentially addressing the deficient networking stack and making it more virtualized. So that's what Nicira focused on, because they saw that early on that between the storage and the networking layers there was still a lot of manual interaction and ongoing administration to physical devices or outside of the virtualization stack devices. And really VMware starts approaching getting a software-defined data center with the networking acquisition of Nicira. Storage probably took up at least half the showroom floor at VMworld. There's a lot of compelling new storage providers that do a lot of cool things, and some of them are flash-based, and some of these on the screen here actually have a little intelligence into the applications that are running on them to where they can optimize whether it needs to be flash in the front cache to make it go faster for like virtual desktops and other applications, and then offloading the storage into lower tiered storage on arrays and balancing it out sort of dynamically. So there's a lot of cool things happening in the storage arena. The product that won overall Best to Show at VMworld was from a company called Hotlink. So if you look at the zoom up box here, you can see that there's Amazon Cloud Stack and also vSphere host. But what you're really seeing is Hotlink at work. What Hotlink does is aggregate. You can manage cloud services such as Amazon and Cloud Stack. You can even do Hyper-V, KVM with some plugins to where it's all managed through the same vSphere client. And from a management perspective, that's really important for a software-defined data center. That's one of the components of it, is to be managed through software. So to be able to aggregate all those different providers into a single interface, which happens to be the vSphere client, we thought was a very compelling and cool type of application. Let's move on to Zerto's vision of disaster recovery, what we've coined as software-defined DR. Software-defined DR is several things. It's virtualization aware. We can make it fully automated if we desire. We can do one site to many configurable, cloud infrastructure management capable, and we have no direct dependencies upon physical devices. So how do we accomplish that? Let's look at what we see the virtual environment today from all the components. This is how Zerto sees the data center. Now this may look familiar because this is the ultimate goal of the software-defined data center. Here's why we see the data center this way currently. It's because we have a virtualization, a Zerto Virtual Manager, and it's all virtualization aware. So we put some virtual replication appliances on each of the hosts, and we are replicating at the hypervisor layer. And if you notice, there's nothing below the ESX host to where we have any dependencies upon any physical hardware. Contrasting the previous slide of all the steps it takes to do array-based replication, this is what it looks like when you have software-defined disaster recovery. You essentially pick out all the VMs that you would like to replicate, and we put them into a virtual protection group, and then we start replication. It's kind of that simple. And here's what it looks like from a logical view of the specific applications in the VMs. Notice we can cross different hosts and also different data stores. So we're not constrained to any kind of storage or host. we can cross all of that and put them into a virtual protection group, and then we start replication. We're also multi-site replication capable, so you can essentially come up with a solution that enables you to go from primary data centers to local sites to cloud providers. Very flexible because, again, remember the layer that we're working at. We're working at the virtualization layer, so we don't have physical constraints like array-based replication. And the management all occurs in the vSphere client. All you have to do once Zerto is installed is enable the plugin, and you have a Zerto tab to manage your infrastructure from. So in conclusion, we believe the software-defined data center is actually the necessary steps to enable more companies to utilize clouds, whether it be a hybrid, internal, or public cloud. We agree that vSphere replication is correctly placed as a data protection mechanism, but certainly not disaster recovery. And third, we believe that the software-defined DR is certainly the destination for what DR should be. It should be the most flexible of your infrastructure because one of the key components to virtualization is its flexibility. With the level of importance that DR inherently has, being the most flexible is the most beneficial to your organization. If you would like to know more information about the software-defined DR, go to Zerto.com. Thank you.